In this video, we are going to talk about Katakros, Nagash and Arkhan, the three Deathlords of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and how Generals Handbook 2020 has affected the balance of power between this triumvirate. So we're going to talk about the main characters in OBR, the big boys.
Yeah. Shifting tides, I think.
Yeah.
Changed around a lot.
Yeah, I think the Generals Handbook and the FAQ to Petrifex Elite has had a particular shift in power with the three big guys. And for those who don't know who I'm talking about, that's Katakros, Nagash, and Arkhan the Black.
Yep.
I know what people are thinking. Arkhan's not really on the same level, but he's my boy. So
He's
he went up as so basically he went up in points, didn't he? Because he is particularly awesome. The other two stayed the same, but it's Petrifex that's changed their stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So you saw a lot of lists kicking around where you took Katakros because he's effectively a Liege Cavalos and Relentless Discipline Generation, and your kind of like amazing command ability just all rolled into one. And I think that Nagash, although he had access to the whole lore, he didn't give you the Relentless Discipline Generation. So actually
it's a very different type of list, isn't it? With
exactly. And so actually for the same points as Nagash, you can get Katakros and Arkhan. And Arkhan has access to all the lore as well.
So that's magic, but he does it very reliably.
Yeah. So he's effectively like a mini Nagash in terms of casting, but obviously he's a separate model, but you get the benefits of adding Katakros. Now the reason Nagash kind of outshone a little bit was because he's actually hits harder, and in Petrifex he ended up with a 2-up save, and his ability to reroll ones basically made him pretty invulnerable.
Yeah, so just in case people hadn't seen, basically Petrifex used to give everyone +1 save. What are the temple things called in OBR?
The Legions.
The Legions. So Petrifex is one of the 4 Legions available, and that was FAQ to now be its reroll once, so the same as Mystic Shield, basically across your army. And Nagash does that anyway.
Yeah, yes. I also found I saw Nagash being a gun platform because he could multiple cast Arcane Bolt, and it was like I used to call him Machine Gun Nagash because it would be like you've got a guy that's almost unkillable to non-mortal wounds, rocking about the table, machine gunning stuff with Arcane Bolt, and then as soon as he takes a wound, teleporting to somewhere else on the table because of the spell lore that he would have cast.
So there was a couple tricks. So one is Protection of Nagash spell. So that allows you that when you take a wound or mortal, it actually makes it more likely now because you don't have to take all the after saves because you only take one now.
Yeah. You can choose. You choose to take your 6 up.
Exactly.
You take your 6 up instead of your 5 up.
Yeah. And then he can, if you take a wound, then you can set up a page on the table 9 away. So what you could do is go on the, like, basically do that to him straight away, teleport, drop a load of bolts, then charge, and then get into combat.
You've got various options available in the list. So he's got so many casts. I mean, this sounds like a lot of setup value, but when you've got 8 spells, he really doesn't care. You cast Protection, and then you do like Suffocating Gravetide, which does D3 mortal wounds. And particularly with the choice of being allowed to take just a 6-up save for those, there's a good chance you take one of those wounds, and then you just zap over to another part of the table and cast like 6 Arcane Bolts at something. An Arcane Bolt is, if you get it's not unmodified, if you just get a 10 or more an Arcane Bolt, it's D3 mortal wounds instead of 1 mortal wound. And when you're at +3 to cast, that is like half the bolts coming out of you with D3 wounds, 18 inches away. Kill a key piece or 2, maybe debuff something, and then charge into it, and it can really mess with people's game plan. And it's an antidote to a fairly slow, immobile army as well, because he can literally travel 60 inches if he wants to.
Yeah, he's key with those Arcane Bolts to like just kill those support characters. Like I would not want to play it with Fire Slayers because whilst you can bounce the sort of like the sort of like the mortal wounds onto your Hearthguard with the guns, you're still going to lose. They're only 5 wound heroes. Like you know, you take out those support heroes, then your Fire Slayers aren't really going to be While the Hearthguard Berserkers aren't going to have their 4-up save after save because there's going to be no heroes in range. I think Nagash is a very, very good in that respect.
He is,
and also he's no slouch at fighting either, right? So
no, he's not. He's a bit swingy. If you have some debuffs to hit, you can get unlucky, particularly if his if you're planning on his shooting attack hitting, which it should, but it doesn't. He's also a lot more vulnerable now. So if you are going for that tactic, yes, you're more likely to get teleport, but when you land there, you don't have a 2+ save re-rolling once, and that's very big.
I think as well, because you can still be in Petrifex and still go for the extra rend ability they have, which is bludgeon, relentless discipline, because Nagash gains the Ossiarch Bonereaper keyword and the Legion keyword. So the reason Petrifex was so good, because one, it gave you the save anyway, and then it also gave you access to this amazing ability where you can increase the rend of all of Nagash's attacks. So, his Alakanash was going to be rend 4, his Zephyr Nebtar would be rend 3. It's just horrendous. And then if you had a Liege Cavalos for your Relentless Discipline, you could even buff his attacks. So you could actually give him extra attacks because he gets the Bone Reaper keyword. So everything that you can buff Bone Reapers with, you can buff Nagash with. So he is an all or nothing. It's all in him, really. I think one of the great endless spells is the Carrion. So the Soul Stealer Carrion, because it allows you to use that for line of sight. So actually you can basically Arcane Bolt hiding heroes and stuff like that, because you set up anywhere on the table. As long as you're within range of Nagash, you don't need to see what you're bolting. And that lightning bolt, to coin that kind of LARP video that went around the internet, lightning bolt, Arcane Bolt barrage is actually really powerful.
It's so reliable. It's obscenely reliable.
And I think because he gets so many bonuses to unbind and cast, it is fairly obscene when it gets rolling. And I think
they don't go down very easily either. A lot of people get surprised when they play.
So
when he's taken a few greens, the casting bonus rather than his dispelling bonus, it's very easy for it to get affected a tiny bit, and it'll go down to 7 spells, and then you do 1 spell, you heal yourself up, and suddenly you're back where you were.
Yeah, so it's as he gets hurt, he does get weaker in magic, but there are ways to heal. So it's I think for me, I think in Nagash is more powerful in a Legion, in a Bone Reaper army than he is in a Legion and Nagash army.
I would agree.
I think he falls into a more support role in a Legion and Nagash army. But the problem is you don't have enough points to have enough for him to support, really. Right. And you get the issue of having to have Death Wizards to give him spells. But I think I think that's kind of gone because of the there's some change to the War Scroll that's affected that. I'm not really an expert on the Nagash in Legion, but I think when we're talking about Bone Reapers, the biggest impact to Nagash has been the fact that Katakros' stock has gone up, purely because you've lost the ability to give him +1 save just from being in the Legion of Petrifex. So, but I think there are some good options other than Petrifex. If you take Nagash, I actually think Null Myriad is a good choice, because it gives you the ability to protect yourself from spells. So you have
to spend 1 each time you try and do that, though. 1 RDP point, don't you? And you don't.
Well, no. So you get Eldritch Knolls as an ability. So each time a friendly Null Myriad unit is affected by a spell or endless spell, roll a dice. On a 5-up, ignore the effects.
Yeah.
But you also get a command ability, which is Hold Fast, which is before you use the Null ability, you can spend a point, and then it's on a 2 instead of a 5. So it's a 2-up ignore, but you get an innate 5-up ignore anyway without spending a command point. Yeah. So if you want to protect Nagash, particularly with this resurgence of Lumineth for 1, but also Zinj, I think it's a really good option to take Null Myriad. Plus, you also get a command trait. So if you have a Liege Cavalos, you can give him this trait as a general, and it's subtract 1 from hit rolls that target this guy, and 1 from bravery from enemy units within 3. But the artifact is really good. So it's the Baleful Blade. So do not make save rolls for attacks made by that weapon. Wounds cannot be negated. So you just do the damage. There's no saves. There's no ignores. There's no nothing. It just goes straight through, and you can't negate them.
Yeah, he ends up being a really quite small. Like, well, if you have it on a little horsey dude, he's pretty nippy, zapping around, and he ends up being like a Stormcast utility character in terms of survivability, but he actually hits really hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got 3 attacks at damage 2, so, you know, and then he can boost his attacks as well. So
exactly,
you can basically go 4 attacks, damage 2, freeze and freeze. And, you
plus
know...
horsey. The horse isn't bad.
Yeah, I don't think the weapon will affect the horse because it's just a rider.
No, it doesn't, but it's just a form. You can go and wipe out a 10 wound unit on an objective with that guy pretty reliably, even if they've got a 4+ save or something.
Yeah, but I think he's just... You'd be surprised at how big a difference that makes when they just can't take any saves at all.
Yep.
So killing like a 5-wound hero becomes fairly easy. You just go in and go, well, you're going to take 4 wounds pretty reliably.
Really annoying things like an Azeros on a piece of terrain with his 2+ or whatever, and you spend the triumphs doing rerolling once. No, dead. Just like flat dead.
Yeah, and even like to go into like a big guy and take like 4 wounds off of it, you know, like even against another Nagash or another Archeon or something like that. I mean, he's probably going to get squished back, but the point is that if he's supporting another hero, so if Nagash is somewhere and he's supporting Nagash, then you're probably not going to be hitting the Cavalos. But I think like it's quite nice to start looking away from Petrifex for Nagash. I mean, it's still good. I mean, Petrifex still has great artifact command ability. It's still brilliant. I mean, but the thing is,
your end is never going to not be good.
No, exactly.
I was going to say, those Mortek Guard are still beasts, right, with that extra rend ability. I just don't think that you can see... It just means that the Petrifex Elite list changes, doesn't it? It's like...
And it's not the only option.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like, you know, I think there's lists. To be fair, the OBR book, whilst there's not a lot of choice within the range of models, you know, there's a lot of lists and a lot of differences. I mean, I still think there's a good crematorium list out there somewhere.
Oh, man.
There's loads of good crematorium and Starlight Lord lists. I think the only Legion that I think is kind of left behind is Ivory Host. And probably because if I say that, you probably think I didn't even know that one. But yeah, it's not very good. No. But the command ability from Nagash, which is you can reroll hit rolls of 1, and that kind of and save rolls of 1. That kind of does what Petrifex does anyway. So if you pop in that Supreme Lord of the Undead command ability every turn with a Relentless Discipline point, then the Petrifex army bonus does nothing. So I think Null Myriad is a really good alternative because it protects Nagash and he's your main piece. So it's, for me, that's where I would be leaning. Because to be able to ignore a key spell on the 2+, like you just say, well, they're going to cast something that's going to completely neuter Nagash, like stop him moving, or you know, either do like loads of mortal wounds and probably kill him. You just say, well, on 2+, you're not doing it. So it's like, I know it's hard to get spells off against Nagash, but anyway, sometimes it's like they force something through, and you just think, oh, it just got through, and I really can't have this thing doing it.
That's the problem almost with Nagash, though, isn't it? Like, if with having him in the army, is that while you're paying a lot of points for him, and he's like a Swiss Army knife for OBR, is that he is the linchpin. He's like the fault in the army, as in if he goes early, then you pretty much lost the game. But if he performs brilliantly, then you've pretty much won the game because you've got all of the backup. I mean, I know there's a lot more to the OBR army than that, but when you're taking up essentially nearly half of your army with a model, if he goes down early, then, you know, you're not going to get, you know, I mean, this sounds completely obvious, but he is like the linchpin, right? If you can shut him down, then be it with a spell, then he doesn't, like, that's a force multiplier. Then the army's slower, the army's not doing what it needs to do. So having the non-myriad to stop that's great. Like, as you pointed out, Russ, you know, I mean, I don't think it's going to help you against Be'lakor, but it's still, you know.
No, but you know, that's Be'lakor, and sometimes it's a case that you just put up with that for the for whatever reason. But there are ways to mitigate the Be'lakor if it becomes very popular. The catapults are a great answer to that, because he has to Nagash. He has to basically do it to Nagash turn 1 to stop you teleporting. Yeah. Then you just catapult off Be'lakor, and then the next turn you're free. And as soon as Nagash is free, you just be patient. I mean, like, sometimes he's going to be shut down for a turn. You don't like go for that impactful I'm going to run at you turn, because if he doesn't shut you down when you're sat in your deployment zone, you can always protection and Nagash teleport and be in his army and get the value. And then even if Nagash is basically shut down from Be'lakor, but if he goes first, I mean, there's because OBR have got catapults, which is the unique, and I know that this is why catapults are so critical, because in the Death Allegiance you just don't have anything that does what they do. And the point is that you absolutely have to have something that can take out something like Be'lakor at range, otherwise you can't be competitive. It's just the nature of Age of Sigmar.
I mean, Nagash does a similar thing when you bob him over and teleports. Yeah, but they're a good army being patient with. Like, they're not a kill your opponent turn 1. We're still here turn 4, and we're still hitting like a ton of bricks, and we've barely lost any models at the start.
Yeah. So we could probably talk a little bit. It's probably a good idea to talk about Arkhan, just because he's similar to Nagash. Obviously I would say that because I think he's awesome, but he's basically like a faster moving, lower wound count model that has access to all the spells, and costs like a fraction of the points. So for me, what's really good about him is obviously he's got the command ability to add range, but his Curse of the Years spell has been a little bit changed now. So it's basically, but it's still quite a nice damaging spell. So it used to basically go down, you used to do it on a wound on a 6, then a 5, then a 4, then a 3, then a 2, then a 1, then it just to wipe something out. Now it doesn't do that anymore. It always fails on a 1, but it starts off on a 5. It starts off the same really, but it just fails on a 1. But you can get down to do like 7 or 8 mortal wounds onto something quite comfortably. So it's still a good spell. He can cast and unbind 3 spells. He's obviously got. Sorry.
It's at +2, but there's easy ways to get into +3 to cast.
He's +2 to cast, +2 to unbind. Yeah, so I don't think there's easy ways to get him for bonuses in OBR. I might be wrong, but he's basically he's got bonuses to cast, and his ability increases the range of spells.
6 inches.
Yeah. So, and he can also cast bolt multiple times. So doing like Curse of the Years 2 bolts is fairly good, and because it's 18-inch range, if you spent 2 points to boost it to give it extra range, then you're basically adding you're going up to like 24-30 inches. So he's quite good at poking from long range away. He's also
put yourself in harm's way like Nagash does to do the same thing.
And he's good enough in combat to go in and kill support or small units, or go in like infantry, like going into like a ghoul unit on the side is fine, or like taking on a unit adjudicators, or like just little units that even like smallish elite units. If you can get him, tag him on the corner, as long as you're not getting attacked by 4 or 5 models, you'll be fine.
You're okay. I've always found, like, when people use him well, and I've seen people use him well against me, is when he's that support piece, but on those really crucial turns, he's then clearing off the objective that I've left 10 models on, or 5 models on, because he's like,
fast.
And you're like, oh, he's round the side and he's into the, like you said, a side of unit adjudicators that have just sat there all game trying to score, and he's gone in to the side of them and he's wiped the unit and killed them quite easily. I think it's knowing when to use your support piece in an aggressive manner. It's the same with, like, people always used to get caught out with me when I charge people adjudicators, and I'm like, they're like, what? And they're rubbish in combat, but if you can just chip one wound off a hero when you need it, then they're worth their points and they do their job.
Exactly.
And I found that, using Arkhan that way, like, jumping over a screen, killing like a 1 wound hero on an objective, stuff like that, he's very, very good at it after he's performed his support piece role.
What's his move for us? Is it 16?
It's 16 inches, and you can, because in OBR, you can spend a point to get +3.
Very good. Like
So-
that is massive. It's huge. What,
Only-
about 3 inches out?
So it becomes a 19-inch move.
Yeah.
So it's
That
pretty
makes a
good.
charge pretty, like, way more likely in a lot of circumstances. It means that if your opponent goes first, you can probably reach anything that's moving forwards if you want to. And it just keeps people honest, because if you haven't put the horses into the list, then you get something else that can threaten. It's just the potential of it. It can threaten it, and you can just stand there and exist. You can threaten Curse of Years with boosted range, threaten Arcane Bolt with boosted range while he's completely safe. You can also threaten a charge while he's completely safe, which you don't have much of, if any, in the rest of the army, I don't think.
Yeah, he's just a great all-rounder, and I think what's nice about it is having access to the whole lore means you've got a massive toolbox of spells.
Great debuffs in there. Like,
Well,
really
like, you know,
good.
empower Nadrite weapons is kind of like amazing on Mortec Guard, and you know, even like fused bone shields. Those two are quite commonly seen on the caster heroes, but a lot of the other spells that you don't see are still very good, and I think it gives you because you've got the options there. You're not restricted on, oh well, you know, I've only got Empower Nadrite in my army because I've only got one caster, because the caster heroes are actually fairly weak, and the only reason you kind of take them is to unlock the formations. But Arkhan's he's still good. I mean, he's more expensive now. I think he's 380 now. So I struggled to fit him in, but the way I look at it is if I could take Nagash or I could take Katakros and Arkhan, because they're both 880 points. So we should probably talk about the big man himself, who's basically gained in power, in my opinion, because I mean, I was running Mortis Praetorians before anyway, so his command ability, which is allows you to basically give you +1 armor save onto every unit that's wholly within 18, but also if you've got the some of his cronies alive, then it's wholly within 36. So I think it's the Prime Necrophorus, which you have until you take 4 wounds. But we should probably talk about the healing as well, which I
was just going to
mentioned.
say,
So because Nagash and Arkhan can heal 3 units 3 wounds, where they can heal themselves. So actually they're quite hard to get rid of, because every turn they're healing 3 wounds. So if you take Katakros and Arkhan, you can put 6 wounds back on both of those characters each turn, because they can both hit each other.
That's crazy.
So it's kind of, so you put 3 on, you can hit each other like twice. So you basically go, well, I'm going to put 3 wounds, then 3 wounds, then 3 wounds, then 3 wounds, and the healing is key, because actually it's quite hard to get healing in to a OBR list, and if you're running multiple units of the Mortec Guard, then that's putting 6 into one, 6 into another, 6 into another. That's quite a significant amount of stuff to get through.
It's also putting 2 horses back, isn't it?
Yeah. So I personally, I think the healing makes running Katakros and Arkhan a very very kind of good prospect, rather than running Nagash. But Nagash is a lot more offensive, a lot quicker, so he's kind of got the combat power. He's slower than Arkhan, faster than Katakros, got more combat power, and his magic is way more effective. So it's that balance, but you don't have the relentless discipline. So if you take Katakros, you lean more on your units, which is why I kind of like him. But you end up with 5 relentless discipline points from Katakros just being on the table, basically. So it's a massive pool every turn that you're getting.
That's big difference.
Yeah, and like, you know, he's got 20 wounds and a 2-up save when his ability's on. You get him +1 to hit as well for all attacks by Bonereapers, wholly within 36 as well. So that's making you hit on 2s with most of your stuff. It's a massive boost.
Is it melee or just flat?
I think it's melee. No, it's just +1 to hit rolls. So
because I thought that was the case when I played JP. He had Katakros and catapults. On the catapults, he was just in this it's a small army, but you had 5 horses in it, which really made a big difference, which I guess if you squeezed Arkhan in, you'd have a similar option there. Those 2 catapults, he boosted their range on their moves, so their threat range was disgusting, and then they're so much more reliable when they've got +1 to hit.
Yeah, I think the list that I ran was 20 Mortec, 2 catapults, the Bone Shaper in the Mortis Ballistari with another 10 Mortec. I think it's 20 Mortec, 5 cavalry, 2 catapults, the Bone Shaper, Katakros, and the Liege Cavalos.
Yeah,
and that comes in Mortis Praetorian.
Very similar.
And that comes out basically 2,000. And that list is great. It's pretty all round. You've got a bit of everything. The cavalry won me a game because they ran onto an objective in Knife to the Heart. So it's just a very nicely balanced army. But one of the things that Katakros does, which is really good, is that if he's completely unhurt, he's got this scroll bearer, which you can pick one enemy unit on the battlefield, and then they've got to subtract hit rolls for attacks that unit make. So you can basically debuff a unit just anywhere on the table. Doesn't matter. Like no roll, nothing, no way to stop it. And then the other thing, which is really good, is the way that you can basically stop command points. I think you can steal a command point on a 4+. So I'm just trying to find the rule, but I'm kind of.
He's got everything on his scroll, isn't he? I've got it in front of me.
Yeah, I think it's the Spy Master. So once per turn, roll a dice when your opponent receives a command point on a 4+, it's lost.
Yeah.
So as long as you haven't taken 8 wounds, you've still got that ability. So the fact that
to heal those things back.
But you can imagine like how disruptive that is to a lot of armies. Like if you roll that 4 up and you normally start the game on 2 command points and you've only got 1, then suddenly you can't make say for your army, for example, Byron, you'd be like, well, I can't make my brutes battle shock immune because I have to spend that point doing my war or whatever. And you're like, well, now I haven't got any points.
Literally, I can't reach you, or when I do reach you, I'm worse. Especially, like, you've got the option to make something -1 to hit, and then Arkhan has the option to make something -1 to hit, and he has a spell which is rerolls successful 6s to hit and successful save rolls of 6.
Yeah.
Or something like that as well.
Yeah.
Something can get to you that's meant to like muller your army, and it can be pretty much like impotent, like half as effective. There's an incredible selection of spells that back up what he has too, I think.
Yeah, I'll just double check that spell name, because I think I know the one you're talking about. So I think it's Mortal Contract.
Oh, Mortal Contract's badass.
Oh no, that's something else. So
we've got to talk about that one though, because it's really, really good.
So it's on a 7, picking it with an 18, and for the rest of the battle, roll a dice each phase. Any attacks from a unit inflicted damage on a Bonereaper unit. So when they hurt you, on a 3+, they take D3 mortal wounds. So you can do it. So like a unit that's going to stick around and do damage in a lot of phases is just going to take damage passively. But Drain Vitality, I think, is the one. So on a 6, pick an enemy unit with an 18, until your next hero phase, reroll unmodified hit rolls of 6 and reroll unmodified save rolls of 6.
Yeah.
So amazing, really.
Just so good. Turns off a load of key abilities for people, makes them way less likely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Makes them less resilient. It turns off some like defensive abilities. Some people bounce back wounds on a save roll of a 6 and stuff like that as well. So many things that reach you could literally be half as effective just for getting off that spell on a 6. And if you're Arkhan, that's a joke. And he can buff the range. So I think there's a completely different list between Nagash doing his own thing and being like a key piece that can muller anything you pick really and can teleport around and do this stuff. And then there's a kind of a cohesion list, which is the one that you're talking about, where you're healing everything, you're zapping some people, you're debuffing them, and you've got this kind of indestructible core. If they take you down to 1 wound, you're going to be healed very, very fast. Scary army to be double high. Yeah,
exactly. And I think if you take they've also got the spell Arcane Command, which generates D3 Relentless Discipline points, so you can get around the discipline issue. I think you still want to take a Cavalos for the command ability, but what's good about Katakros is he has Endless Duty, which is the ability which gives you the +1 attack to units wholly within 12. So that's really, really strong. And you've got enough discipline to use that. So the reason I like Mortis Praetorian as well, because I quite like taking Xantos, the named Cavalos, because he has an ability that allows you to reroll wound rolls. It's the only thing in the book that affects wound rolls. And because you're getting +1 to hit, the fact you can reroll wound rolls to 1, you can make your catapults way more reliable. You can make your Mortec guard way more reliable, because your hitting is not a problem. Like it really isn't. I think he's so hard to kill as well. Like, I mean, he is an absolute beast. He's so hard to get rid of. I mean, I literally put him into a half-guard berserker unit on his own, and he just didn't die.
Wow.
It was close, but it was. I played Namvar, and I just put my Mortec guard and Katakros into his big Death Star unit on the first turn, and by the 4th turn, his army was dead. So it was just like, anything in the game that can stand up in combat against that and come out the other side of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to win the priorities and I had to have a bit of luck, otherwise I would have lost it all. But I think the fact that you're in with a fighting chance by ramming into a Fire Slayer army, and he even had the mortal wound weapons on the unit to counteract OBR as well. So it was fairly. I was fairly happy with that result. I think that was good. But Katakros is awesome, and being in Praetorians, you now don't feel like, oh, I could be in Petrifex and it's better, because the thing is, what you've got to remember with his ability, you've got to actually put it up. So if they go first, you don't have it up, so you're a bit prone to alpha. So, but the army is resilient enough normally that you can just weather an alpha strike anyway, because you can still spend discipline on like the Mortec guard and get the reroll saves, or if you're and those defensive abilities in their turn, because you generate the relentless discipline at the start of the combat round. And then actually it puts you in a very strong position, because if you haven't burnt your discipline in their first turn, you can burn all of it, knowing full well you're just about to get a restock. So OBR are very scary when you go between battle rounds, because if they're going second in a battle round and they win the priority to go first, they basically can burn all their discipline in 2 turns, and normally there isn't a lot left for you to worry about coming back at you.
Not at all. Even if it's just 20 Mortex as well, standing next to Katakros, they're much more scary prospects.
All I take is 20. I think anything above 20 is too much. You don't need more than 20. Like, honestly, they're so good. You don't need to spend 400 points on 40 of them. It's a completely false economy. 260 points for 20 of those models. Perfect unit. I don't spend any more than that.
I really like 20 and a Harvester. I think that's...
Yeah, but that's the point. If you want to make that 20 feel like 40, just buy a Harvester.
Yeah, and then you get some rend, you get a shooting attack, which adds up nicely with catapults or bolts or whatever it is you're doing.
I'd rather have 2 20s than 140.
Yeah, same.
It's more expensive, but not that much more expensive. I think it's like 60 points more. So for me, it's like the 20 is like the perfect number. I think any more than that, it's a false economy. I think you're better off having another unit that supports the army, like a Harvester, like a Catapult, like a unit of Immortus Guard to protect your hero, which we'll talk about in the next segment when we get onto the elite units. But I think now it's quite clear that Katakros has gone up in stock purely because Petrifex changed, because he's the only way to get that +1 save across your army. And I think Nagash is still very viable. And I think it kind of forces you out of the Petrifex, and actually there are some hidden gems with the other legions. Even if you went into Praetorian and took Xantos and then used him to buff the wound rolls on Nagash, it still works.
Yeah.
But I think Null Myriad is Arkhan's. It is actually Arkhan's legion from the background, so makes sense to run that with just, even if you just ran Arkhan to give you the magic casting and run the normal Liege Cavalos, that comes in at 380 plus 220 or 200, so it's sort of a bit more expensive than taking Katakros, but you get the magic and you still got the endless duty and command ability. That's why I think Katakros is so good for his points, because he's so efficient, because he gives you all the relentless discipline, and he gives you access to the endless duty command ability, which is super important. It gives you +1 save, +1 to hit across your whole army, negates their command ability on a 4+. You know, he gives you a debuff you could just apply. He's a bit slow, movement 4, but he doesn't need to be fast. I mean, you could boost him to movement 7, you could run him into the middle of the table, surrounded by more tech guard, he ain't going anywhere. And then,
especially with the catapults, you kind of that it doesn't make him any faster, but it means that while you're waiting for people to get to you, or you're waiting to get to them, you can do something.
That's why catapults are important, because they make the person come to you, even if they're just trying to get to the catapult. Because if they don't come to you, they're going to get pulted off every turn, and the relentlessness of just pushing those hordes across the table just has an inevitability about it that I love, and I think that's why the OBR is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, with that many command points as well, your your army could, all of the key units could be at +3 move.
Yeah.
So if you take 20 guys that have a harvester behind them or whatever, pretty scary prospect. And they're just not going to die, and they're going to hit pretty hard. And I find the harvester a really scary combination with them, because if they go into something elite that they can't touch, the harvester just sneaks around the side and tags something on a corner, and that can do quite a lot. He's Ren 3, I think, the harvester.
I think he's Ren 2, but you can make him 3 with Elite, I think. I don't know off the top of my head. Cause,
it's a solid piece.
But
I've always found that the harvester stays alive as well. You always underestimate how much it takes to kill it. I'll put something into it and be like, that should kill it. And it's always left with 4 wounds left or something.
I think now that Petrifex doesn't give it a save, it makes it a lot easier. So it's got a 4+ save. So with and it's Ren 2 normally. But if you had a if you're in Petrifex, you'd have a 3-up save base, re-rolling ones.
Yeah.
Which this is why the Petrifex change is so massive, because actually to get a +1 save on it, you have to take Katakros. It's the only way to do it now. And when you've got 500 points in Katakros, and then you've got to take 3 battle line, and that's a good point. Even the cheapest battle line is 130 points. So you end up with basically, and you don't really 10 of Mortec, you might as well take 20. So you end up spending well over sort of 1,100 points.
Yeah, I think
once you stick in.
Probably dropped Arkhan, but there's not room for enough things.
You have to make the decision: do I want a harvester or do I want a catapult? And because you've got the healing from Katakros, I think the harvester falls on the wayside. But the harvesters are really good. But I think in a anyone who's got any shooting, the harvester is prime target number 1, because shooting the Mortec guard is pointless. If you can kill the harvester, and now it's a lot easier, now it doesn't have the +1 save. So for me, the harvesters are still good, they're still really good, good in combat, good shooting attack, solid, really good synergy with Crematorium.
They get blocked in Crematorium.
Yeah, I mean it's like harvesters up to 11, spinal tap version of OBR. But that's a nice thing, because before you'd probably still take Petrifex even if you had harvesters and more tech, but now you're probably going to go to Crematorium. So what I like about the FAQ change is it lets you look at other legions and not feel like you're disadvantaging yourself.
That's exactly the purpose of them, is to kind of make people think that, make it actually so everything is viable, or things on a more level playing field.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we've talked about the big guys enough. I think out of all of them, Katakros is super, super cool. I like Arkhan a lot, just because he doesn't pigeonhole your army list too much, and he's my boy. But yeah, I think Nagash was still viable and still be interesting to play with, but I just think he's a lot less forgiving now. Purely for that change.
He's risky. That's it. That's why, he's got so much swingy potential and fear on the board. I really like him, but he is risky. Yeah,
I've never played a game with Nagash, which I feel weird, but I need to get one on the table at some point. But okay, we'll take a break and come back. So thanks for this section. Anyway, we'll take a break, come back, and then we'll talk about the legions and the elite units.
thank you very much for watching. If you agree with what we said, let us know. If you disagree with what we said, let us know. Please like the video, comment and subscribe. And if you've got any suggestions for future, please pop them below. We read each and every one, and it really does give us some amazing ideas for future shows and stuff like that. Please follow us on social media, particularly Twitter. Before some shows, we'll put out just a quick, this is the comment, we've got this topic, what are your questions? And if you let us know down, address them immediately whilst we're recording, which is really useful. Also, check out our dice, which are available from Element Games. They're super gorgeous, and they're while stocks last, so you can support us by purchasing them.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.